Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by and for returning to the old world. Today is the second episode of Stuff What I Painted, looking at the models I produced and completed in July of 2022. I warn you now, this is a bit of a weak episode of this. The heatwave we've had in the UK, combined with me picking up my first dose of COVID, has put the brakes on a lot of painting. But in the end, I managed to get some stuff done and made progress towards my wargame resolution. So not a complete loss. Let's see what I managed to achieve. Well, firstly, let's bring out the Napoleonics. 2 ranks of French Napoleonic infantry, combined with the chaps that I finished off last month, gives me a complete unit, battalion or regiment, depending on what terminology you want to use for it really. Maybe even brigade, depending on the level the game gets played at. Ultimately, for a unit, I'm using 15 models. Most rule sets do recommend units are larger than that, normally 24 to 36 models, but I find this works well for the amount of space that I've got, and also conveniently allows me to get a complete division or brigade out of a single box of 60 models. So that's a unit complete. 2 left to do to complete the army, so that's 30 more chaps to paint and base, which is very doable for the end of the calendar year. Moving on, we have this Chappy, a sergeant for my tactical squads. This will give me a bit more flexibility as to how I make use of those going forward. When I run tactical marines in my Space Marine army, I generally run a unit of 10 and a unit of 5. This will allow me to run 3 units of 5, giving me greater flexibility over my weapon loadout for special and heavy weapons. For those of you who have got long memories, you might recall this chap as being a unit sergeant from Space Crusade, so one of the classic miniatures floating around. Now, I do know on this channel I mostly talk about Warhammer the Old World, so not to be completely outdone and ignored from a painting perspective, here we have a classic Bretonnian squire painted in the colours of my fledgling Empire force. I've not really talked about that as an army project on this channel, but it is something I've been quietly working on occasionally in the background. You will have seen those models forming the backdrop of some of my models. My main focus is my dwarf force. Hopefully more on that next month to get Unit 2 done, and I do appreciate it has taken a bit longer than I would have hoped to get some hobby progress done and recorded for that force. But this chap helps, a nice little model, breaks the pace of modelling up a little bit, and it gives me something a little bit different to paint. So that's it from a painting perspective. As I said, a little bit light, so I thought I'd just give you a quick update around how I did with my Chaos Space Marines. So the Chaos Space Marines, they were taken into action recently in a couple of trial games and a local low competition level tournament. Bags of fun to use, but I did find that they suffered from being a painting project rather than being built to be used in action. So it was an army that wasn't really based around a plan, rather based around the units that I had available. A couple of units of Warp Talons, a unit of Obliterators, which I'm using these lead belchers for, Master of Possession, Sorcerer, some Terminators, and then there was some Cultists and Chaos Space Marines. Overall, there was some good go forward, some good punching power. These guys with Master of Possession are quite versatile actually, able to really dish out some punishment, and the restorative powers of the Master of Possession really helped. But not being committed enough to either a firepower base or to a go forward and punch people hard base really led to the army suffering. But there were some good learning points out of that. So when I come back to this project, I've got some ideas around direction of travel, which is good. When it came to the event itself, the first game that I played, I lost to Blood Angels 83-81. It was a really, really good game. Lots of stuff got absolutely battered. And without being a draw, I don't think realistically it could have been any closer. After that, my following two games, both really good. One against Necrons, which turned into a bit of a battering, and one against Death Guard. Death Guard were a really tough opponent for the force I'd taken. I just didn't have enough stuff to punch through the higher toughness than normal Marines, which when combined with the Armour of Contempt proved, well, just really difficult for me to overcome. So definitely back to the drawing board with this. My playing around with Marks of Chaos didn't really help me all that much. But some of those lessons will also help me with my Space Marine force. So I've got a couple of ideas for those guys. I'm going to another of the local tournaments later in August, which will help me put some of those ideas into practice. I'm probably going to be using normal Space Marines. I'm a bit more familiar with them, so hopefully you can get a bit more change out of their stratagems, etc. But we'll see how I get on. Overall, thanks very much once again for dropping by. I will update you on my progress again next month. Hopefully, touch wood and all that, there will be a bit more fantasy stuff to talk about. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will see you for the next one.